Hello, I'm Wick Porter. Welcome to WritersRain, the magazine show that highlights current projects by the creatives you want to know about. Today we're here with architect Homer Oatman. Let's get to it.
My name is Homer Oatman. I grew up in San Diego. I grew up in a neighborhood that was it was developed in the first part of the 20th century as a lot of white stucco, Spanish Revival architecture. And there's some actually great practitioners that I grew up in a neighborhood, examples of their architecture: George Washington Smith, Richard Requa, Irving Gill, who was a modernist that was playing a riff off of that kind of architecture. But in studying it, and I've traveled in Spain and throughout Mexico as an adult, and mostly when we go on vacation, I'm just taking literally thousands of pictures of architecture. My design philosophy is not so much stylistic, it's more, is it done well? If it's in a historical style, if it is what we would call contemporary or the flavor of the day. Most attempts to do something true to whatever that style is are not very successful, but those that are what I aspire to. It needs to be done well. If it's a historical style, it should be historically accurate. My attraction to residential architecture went all the way back through even before graduate school. Residential architecture appeals to me because I think the home is really emotionally the most important architecture. It's the most important piece of environment that we grow up in. Public buildings don't excite me. Certainly hospitals and factories and warehouses, office buildings, I think I just said, they don't move me emotionally. I think our greatest emotional recollections of the home we grew up in, whether it was modest or something more than that. It's where our most formative experiences occurred. The majority of our projects, because of my background in doing HOA work, are Mediterranean, because it's mandated by the homeowners associations, HOA homeowners associations, or by the master builders. Here locally, it's the Irvine Company. And there's certain specific kinds, and this is where you run into the issue of, are things really true to the style? I mean, you can say it's Spanish Revival, you can say it's Tuscan, say it's Northern Italian, French Provençal. They're all very specific, but people who are not educated or really don't care to take the time to do something that's true to a specific style, they just sort of throw them all together and you have a sort of generic Mediterranean architecture, and it's generally not done very well. I'm paid to do what I do, and I have to respect the goals and aspirations of the client. So I am hired, I think, because I was recommended by somebody, or they've seen my work online or in publications, they like what they see, it speaks to them on some level. So people will come to me, and then I try to get to know them. I frequently will interview with them 2 or 3 times before we enter into a commercial contract. They're interviewing me, I'm interviewing them. A lot of people I don't want to work with, not because I don't like them per se, it's on a personal basis, it's because their aspirations or their expectations are just not realistic. Or it's something I just really don't want to do. It's not a personal thing, but I need to understand how they live. It's almost like going to a therapist. And in fact, I end up becoming a therapist because my clients are typically a couple. They have their issues, and they don't always want the same thing. So I have to kind of sort that out. I have to figure out how they live, the dynamic of the family, and what are their expectations. And I have to manage those expectations, whether it's Aesthetic, a lot of times it is economic. They have a fixed budget. Do they have a particular style that they want? You start out with concept design. Just what's the basic idea? What are the spaces? How large are they? What is their adjacency to one another? How does that function within your family? How do you entertain? How do you live? That's hand-drawn. Probably takes about 6 weeks, 2 to 3 meetings with the clients, showing them work product, walking them through it. Most people don't understand how to look at a drawing. So the loose hand drawing sketches tend to communicate better than a hardline technical drawing. I'm somewhat different from most people these days because when I was going to school, they didn't have graphic computers. So everything was done by hand, whether it was the initial drawings, perspectives and all that sort of thing, or the hard technical drawings, which people don't really understand. We go through the concept, they kind of agree on it, it's kind of loose. Then you go to schematics, and that is where you start getting into hardline drawings. These days, we're using computers, we have computer graphics, it becomes 3D, to help people better understand what they're looking at. It's really amazing. Design and construction are processes that have, shall we say, speed bumps every step along the way. There are always issues. There are things that are assumed. You can't design everything down to the last nut and bolt. There are things that may be reasonably assumed by the contractor on the plans that we produce. Maybe they don't work out in the field. They're subterranean. We take no responsibility for anything subterranean. And you're going to find things under the surface of the ground that weren't anticipated. And usually it's economic. It's going to affect the schedule and the budget. And people handle that in different ways. Some people don't have a lot of patience or tolerance for that. So you have to be, you have to manage people's expectations and manage their emotions, and you're managing the process. The best project you ever had is the one you're starting, and the worst one was the one you just finished. Because it's like running a marathon. You're full of energy and excitement at the start, and at the end, you're exhausted. And whether it's just you're exhausted by the creative process, exhausted by your client, exhausted by whatever the technical or aesthetic challenges are of that project, if you put your all into it and you really care, it's an exhausting marathon. But it's very fulfilling.